Flinders said to me, "Now then, Green, what were you before you were a pilot?" I must have smelled of being a fitter. I don't know, but I said, "Well, I was a fitter." He said, "Well, what did you have? I said, "We just got our first Hurricane." And he said, "Well, you know all about it then." He said, "Look, there's one over there." He said, "Go and sit in it, and when you feel happy about it, just take it off." I said, "Well, hang on." I said, "You know, I've never flown anything like this, really. What speed does it lift off at, and what speed does it come in at, and what speed do you have for a loop and a roll, and so on and so forth?" So he rattled this off, you know. So I went and sat in this Hurricane, and after a bit I thought, well, I'd better get on with it, I suppose. So I signalled the crew, and they started it up, and away I went. I frightened myself to death. I went up to about 20,000 feet, and here I was in this enclosed cockpit with a mask on, with oxygen on, and intercom radio messages going on all the time about activity that was going on in the air. And I added about 50% of the speeds he'd given me, I suppose, for safety, and did this loop, pulled my stick back like I would have done in the Heart, and blacked out with the G. And when I came round from my blackout, the airplane, the instruments were all going round the cockpit, because they were gyro operated. Nobody said to me you had to lock them before you did any aerobatics or whatever. And so there was no horizon, because there were a lot of them. No, I know what it was. When I came round, I was upside down. I was inverted, hanging on my straps. And I put my stick over to roll out of it, and it went into a spin. And the buzz was that Hurricanes and Spitfires wouldn't come out of the spin. But I thought, well, I've got to try anyway. So I did my correcting action, which was full opposite rudder. If you were spinning left, you get full opposite rudder to the right, and stick forward to unshield the elevator. And as soon as it came out of its spin, you centralised, and then eased it out of the dive, the ensuing dive. Well, I did the correcting action, and sure enough, it came out of the spin. I must have been so full of the joy of being normal, as it were, that I didn't neutralise. Because you put on full opposite rudder, you were spinning right, you put on full left, or vice versa. And so I didn't centralise, and I immediately went into a spin the other way. So when I finally got out of it and centralised, I was quite lowish anyway. I don't know what height, but there was no horizon. I was below the horizon because of the haze, and the instruments were going all around the cockpit. It was quite nauseating, really. Anyway, I found my way back to Biggin, and realised when I was too late to make any difference, I was overshooting. I thought, well, I'll get it done. All right. I'm nothing if not overconfident, still. And as you'll have gathered, and I landed it halfway up the runway, ran out of runway where all the Hurricanes were parked, and zigzagged my way, missing them, and finished off about a yard from the hedge at the end of the airfield. And I sat there with the airplane intact, and I was intact, and I'll tell you, it was some sense of relief to be down in one piece. I felt totally relieved and a little proud that I'd managed it. Whereupon Squadron Leader Worrell, the CO of 32 Squadron, jumped up onto the main plane and gave me one hell of a strip. And I can't begin to tell you with the language he used or what he said, but report to my office. So I went in, and he said, "Now what the hell were you?" He'd calmed down a bit by that time. He said, "What were you doing?" So I told him, it was my first flight, told him what had happened. Okay, he said, "Well, we'll forget the fortnight's confined to camp," he said. But he said, "Don't ever do anything like that." He said, "You could have written off half a dozen airplanes which we valuably need, and yourself," he said. "Don't ever do that again." That was my first flight in a Hurricane.